there was a temporary shutdown for the largest port out of Ethiopia from their supplier MSC, maybe couple of weeks ago now, depending on when this is out. But that temporary shutdown just stalled all exports, and that was coffee, that was everything, and that was due to the volatility in the region that they were seeing. That was due to literally missile attacks on container ships in the region, and them having to reroute and understand how to handle this and how to facilitate that risk of actually sending people through that region. So the ramifications for a coffee roaster is the coffee that I've booked already left prior to this, or is the coffee still at port? And if the coffee's still at port, that means it's going to literally, even if it was closed for, I think it was only a couple of days, could make months of difference at the end if it was, caught up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's understanding that this is one of those volatilities we talked about in the freight sector that are happening more often. There has been things like this previously. This isn't the first time it ever happened, but they are happening more often.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop. It's time to become a coffee consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 4 of a 5-part series with Caleb from Greensquare, where we're talking about the new normal when it comes to buying green coffee for coffee roasters. In this podcast episode, we're going to be talking about the shift in inventory and supply chain management. So, Caleb, you have a platform that helps to take care of this stuff. So one might suggest and say that you are an expert in this. And in the last episode, we were talking about a whole bunch of stuff when it comes to the pricing and budgeting around this. But buying green coffee is not just about the price. There's a lot more that's involved that we haven't really had I don't know whether we say we haven't had the need, but I feel like we've been lazy as an industry. In like a couple years ago, it wasn't rare to find a coffee roaster that had never looked at a contract before. Right?
100% true.
I feel like we're losing that luxury very quickly. Now people have to get informed about inventory management and supply chain management, especially given all of the different things that are going on, whether we're talking about climate change, we're talking about geopolitics, we're talking about price volatility, currency volatility, labor volatility. All of these things are now really important things that play a role, and even so much as like warehousing costs. All of these things, what's going on at different ports, who owns the ports. There is so much that you need to understand. And by understanding all of this stuff, you put yourself ahead, not of your competition, but of whether your business survives or not. Are you seeing this how are you seeing all of this shift in the market?
Yeah, it's overwhelming to hear it all said back to back to back to back to. And this is for someone who looks at this every single day with my team and our community. And it is overwhelming to hear that. So as a roaster, if I was coming in cold and I heard that, I'd be like, oh, hang on.
I just want to roast coffee, man.
Yeah. I get up at 5 every day. I go roast. I go sell my coffee. I go find me a roaster who has the spare time to learn all that.
Yeah.
And I don't know who they are. Hats off to them.
Right.
But it's one of those things that it is something you have to be aware of. And there's a consistent theme in my advice and our structure is if we can help communication and we can streamline information access and who can see what when and who knows what's happening when is crucial. So once again, we are only launched in Australia. There are a lot of similarities internationally, but as a real user case in Australia, we've seen roasters having, on average, we're buying, and this was back in 2021 when we did this research, we're buying off between 4 to 8 different importers or suppliers in a calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be buying and signing contracts from here. Maybe a one supplier had a platform, so some of my contracts were on there. One supplier just did it in emails. One supplier didn't sign contracts. And then you as a roaster have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars booked all out there because you're one of the good ones and you've booked it. If you're not, you're dealing with spot and that's another job. But if you have booked it, you're then having to invest time to pull all that together and manage it and track it and know where you're up to. And what was happening, because this was such a challenge, a lot of roasters were pushing this back on their supplier and saying, how much of that have I got left? How much of that do I have left? When's that going to run out? How much of this do I have? So it was a lot of like decoupling themselves from that management, which just increases risk. And the suppliers were taking it on and doing it. But now that is, green coffee is the largest cost center as a coffee roaster. Like, how do I need to know that, and I need to be aware of that. So a big focus for us, and this is kind of one of the core things behind what we build as Greensquare, is building a centralized place that can do that for you, but then the way I describe it is I used to build Excel spreadsheets. I used to have roasters who would contact me and be like, can I use your sheet? Can I buy your sheet? I was like, yeah. It's sick because I felt cool and I like Excel spreadsheets. But it's like, imagine if I could have an Excel spreadsheet that would let me know if I was drawing down too quickly. Imagine if I had an Excel spreadsheet that would track all my drawdowns and then recommend how much I should get in the future. Imagine if I had an Excel spreadsheet that would, like, every time I changed an item, it sent an order to my supplier. So I didn't have to change an item on my spreadsheet and then go send an email or make a phone call. And it's connecting your data sets that can allow you to enhance and get these insights without any extra additional manual work. So that's a focus for us. And that's an area that is crucial. If you're not using an Excel spreadsheet right now, go get one. Do it straight away. If you're not, like, everyone who's using an Excel spreadsheet for coffee roasters are the heroes, because you're trying to manage this absolute jungle of information that's being thrown at you to secure your business. And what we're hoping to do with software is to give you a place to elevate and take that to the next level and give you some of your time back. So as a coffee roaster, you can do what you're good at. You can roast amazing coffee, you can serve amazing coffee, and you can keep that side up, and you can not have to spend hours in an Excel sheet managing it.
Well, and it goes back to the story, right? Having this data managed gives you an understanding of what the story of your business is trying to tell you. So if we use that example of what you were saying, do you know whether you're drawing down your coffee faster this month than you did last month? That's starting to tell you a story about your customers and your sales and it's a really important insight to have, that if you don't get on top of it, can get you into trouble, especially with volatility the way that it is, right?
Yeah, and it's just catching it higher up the funnel.
Yeah.
So, like, you might be able to catch it when it's leaving your roaster door, but if you catch it before it's entering your roaster door, if you catch it when it's leaving your roaster door, you've got to go stock up and you've got to go cover that. But if you catch it when it's entering the door, then you've got all that time that you're consuming it, you're roasting it, you're serving it, to replace it, to get more, to do whatever you need to do to get it when it enters the door, not when it leaves the door. So it gives our roasters that flexibility to kind of handle those things. This
is the kind of hedging that I would like people to invest in, rather than the other kind of hedging. You know what I'm saying? So if you invest in hedging with knowledge and empowering yourself with getting deeper insight into the story of what your business is telling you earlier in the game, even if it's a couple of months, if you can see what's coming and know the blind spots before they show up, you can forget the other kind of hedging. You don't need it. It gives you, it does the opposite of what ends up happening. It extends your runway.
Yeah.
As opposed to shortens it.
Yeah, the big thing for me was, like, we do a visual chart, and I used to have it in spreadsheets, which was like how many cells are yellow and these things. And,
right.
If it's yellow, green, or red, that's good, bad, or whatever. But, like, literally a chart that shows every order you place as it draws down. And are you ahead of schedule or behind schedule? And when does that mean you're going to run out?
That's sick, man.
It's simple metrics that are just structured in a way that allow you to have that insight rather than have to do the workload to get that insight. So it's a fundamental thing that myself and my co-founders, and, like, we've driven towards the whole time, was we need to democratize the access to this technology, because the way I described it, the largest 1% of roasters in the world have this. They have this technology. We're not geniuses who have it. What we've done is we're going to make it for everyone to use, which has its challenges, has its barriers, has its hurdles to do. But, like, the big roasters globally are doing this. They know this stuff. They are across this. And we think it would be better for our entire supply chain if everyone listened at their own.
100%.
So if you could own your own data, if you can forecast and manage your own procurement data, you're going to be able to make more informed decisions. I can't tell you what those are. I can't tell you what grade to buy. I can't tell you what flavor to buy, but I can help inform you about what you've done historically and what's going to change in the future by giving you a digital foundation to manage. So it's kind of crucial, but the supply chain management is shifting right now that if you aren't managing it, you are at risk. So we're trying to give resources to help mitigate those risks and give you ways to manage it.
Excuse me. So I want to bring in some of the stuff that we were talking at the beginning of the episode and kind of align it with what we were just talking about there. Talk to us about what's happening in Ethiopia. So let's say that somebody has forecasted, they've decided that they want, and they've booked a forward contract for some Ethiopian coffee. Tell me why that is challenging this year in a different way than it was in previous years, and why being informed is important.
So once again, I'm lucky to have an amazing network that helps inform me on this. I don't suddenly know this overnight. So it is down to communication, and through talking to our network of different exporters, different importers, different roasters that have been affected, we've seen, and it was kind of widely reported that there was a temporary shutdown. Oh, thumbs up. There was a temporary shutdown for the largest port out of Ethiopia from their supplier MSC, maybe couple of weeks ago now, depending on when this is out. But that temporary shutdown just stalled all exports, and that was coffee, that was everything, and that was due to the volatility in the region that they were seeing. That was due to literally missile attacks on container ships in the region, and them having to reroute and understand how to handle this and how to facilitate that risk of actually sending people through that region. So the ramifications for a coffee roaster is the coffee that I've booked already left prior to this, or is the coffee still at port? And if the coffee's still at port, that means it's going to literally, even if it was closed for, I think it was only a couple of days, could make months of difference at the end if it was, caught up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's understanding that this is one of those volatilities we talked about in the freight sector that are happening more often. There has been things like this previously. This isn't the first time it ever happened, but they are happening more often. So MSC accounted for roughly about 80% of all exports from this port. I would love to say the name of the port, but I would absolutely butcher. Okay, I'll let you go. I sound more Australian every time I try and pronounce it. If anyone watches the video, you see me cut out every time I said it. But they accounted for about 80% of all exports from that port, and they had to temporarily stop to be able to kind of handle this disruption. We saw Maersk only a few months earlier also have to do a temporary stop for that port because of that volatility. So they're happening more frequently, which is affecting our supply chain of products, no matter which. It's not like there's one supplier that's, doing it. It's happening across the board. So It is challenging. Like in Australia, we heard there's been a good amount of product that already left, so that there's not too much challenge. But we're definitely seeing still a decent chunk of roasters who have shipments from certain suppliers that are getting caught up in that need to go and figure out what they're going to do with that delay. Because even though maybe it leaves the next day and, they're a couple of days behind, anything happens in that journey could get delayed again. Anything happen when it lands at port, and in Australia particularly, we saw port delays. We saw port strikes from employees because of the challenges they're experiencing. That means it's going to sit there. It could literally be a few hundred kilometers from you in Australia, and you can't get it yet because it's not cleared. So it's that volatility that's happening out of there that's super challenging. So yeah.
And it's expensive volatility, right? Like even if you're buying that coffee spot, the importer that's paid for that coffee, they've usually secured a line of credit in order to pay for that coffee once it leaves, or once it's on the boat, and they're paying interest on that whole time. And that price has to get paid by somebody. So either they're going to hedge against that, and if they make their money back, they may not need to have to pass on the costs to you, but they may have to. If they can't hedge against that coffee, all of those delays, there's a whole bunch of different little bits that are piling on, whether it's from interest, whether it's from increased insurance, whether it's from a whole bunch of different stuff. All of this has an impact. And so, the specific, this geopolitical issue is with Yemen, and it's the Houthis that are taking down any particularly ships that are any ties to America. If the company is tied to America in any way, they're teaching them a lesson. So and it just got too risky for ships to leave or come into that port. And so this geopolitical issue is now intertwined with the coffee industry and pretty much every other industry that does business with Ethiopia from that particular port. But now what we're looking at is, okay, we got the coffee out. It's great. The coffee's out this year. What about next year? If this geopolitical situation is not fixed by then, when you add that onto the stuff that we had been talking about of what's going on in Ethiopia, producers may turn around or co-ops may turn around and say, you know what, it is so hard to get this coffee out. We're just going to plant more eucalyptus, or we're going to plant more cuts because it's just too hard to get anything that's got to leave the country. Now we've got geopolitical issues being stacked on top of logistical issues and climate issues and all this other kind of stuff. If you don't understand the story of your business, you're not going to know how to hedge from a supply perspective. It may not be that you can get Ethiopian coffees next year. Or if you're not informed about that, trying to figure out what the solution is going to be if scenario 1 happens, scenario 2 happens, scenario 3 happens. It's going to be really important for you to, I guess, the best way to look at it is be prepared for many different things or the volatility to increase. Right?
Yeah, for sure. One thing particularly I would say in that sense is with a coffee roaster kind of handling that volatility. We've talked about it in a few of the previous episodes so far, but if we looked at it and we weren't kind of far enough ahead, we've just started buying forward contracts from this most recent harvest. If we were able to plan and kind of manage that better, and we had a buffer ourselves, booked ourselves, contracted ourselves, not relying on it just being there because of the good nature of an importer, we would probably be more flexible to be able to mitigate those risks right now and go, okay, we've been stored for 2 months, but we have a 2-month buffer. So that means we're going to get this a little bit later. We might need to look at alternate origins. We might need to look at alternate supply chains. There's different ways to do it, but without planning, you're at will to whatever happens in the market. And these things are happening more often. So for me as a roaster, it can get a little bit overwhelming to hear all these challenges, to hear all these things, and to know, how do I actually take this and how does it impact me and how do I mitigate my risk? You cannot remove them, but what do I do? And by being on top of your planning and having those strong communication channels and kind of visibility of your own product, you can mitigate and you can be aware of these things to go, we're going to be there. But it is just a crazy, challenging time to be kind of getting product from everywhere at the moment.
And before, these problems are not new. There has always been volatility coming out of Ethiopia. In the 20 years that I've been in this industry, there has always been problems coming from one origin or another. There have been cartels in Colombia forever that,
There was internal shipping routes in Colombia where trucks couldn't get through and they were getting
100%.
sold and stopped. There was fertilizer price,
all of it.
Frost,
None of this stuff is new. But what we
Yeah.
had before was a spot market that could get us through the gaps, right?
Sure.
And that is what's changed. That is one of the main things that has changed, that we can no longer lean on in any kind of a significant way, because it should be an absolute last resort at this moment if you can get access to it. The problem is I'm hearing that there is too many places where getting access to the spot coffee is going to bury somebody's business. It's that expensive at the moment. So you don't want to have to lean on that.
Yeah, it's just not the safety net that it was. And a lot of what we're hearing is a lot of roasters aren't realizing it's not the safety net that it was until they have to jump into it, or they have to start to lean on it.
Right.
And what I would love to do is be able to make them aware that it's just not there. So let's do some things. Let's put some things in place so we don't have to lean on it and find that out for ourselves, because if I'm hearing of someone experiencing it and we can communicate that other people will maybe miss that or ways they can protect themselves from having to experience that, that's the goal. But it's there, and it's something we have to be hyper aware of.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so folks, in the final episode of this series, we're going to go on a deep dive of what it looks like if the next couple of years are volatile and continue to be volatile, how you can forecast into that volatility without necessarily like shying away from it, because I'm not sure that you're going to have the luxury of saying, well, fuck it, I'm just going to ignore it and wish for the best and speak to my fairies and hope that they take care of me. I'm not sure that that's an option for the next few years. So join us for the final episode of this series. Peace, love, or peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.